Welcome to Beautiful Feet Videos. Today, we're talking about, we're talking about a very important subject. We're talking about friendship. We're going to kind of get into the darker side of friendship and the absence of friendship. But before we get into that, we need to go over the definition of friend. Definition of friend. Well, first of all, it's a noun. A person attached to another by feelings or affection or personal regard. Another definition is a person who gives assistance or patron or supporter. This one I really like is another noun. A person who is on good terms with another. A person who is not hostile. So we get this idea of friendship being a connection between two people. And that connection is caring, loving, supportive. That's what friendship is. Now, what happens when you no longer have a friendship with somebody who you cared about? Too often, I feel like we face this. You grow up with somebody, or you grow close to somebody over a period of time. It could be years. It could be a year. It could be a lifetime. Sometimes we get to the point where friendships don't always last. I know TV and your animated cartoons and children's shows would love to have you think that the friend that you make in your younger years will be the friend that you have when you are old and rickety and in a wheelchair. And that does happen, and when that happens, it's a beautiful thing. But it's not always the case. We end up separating from our best friends. We end up separating from the people who we care about the most. Now my question is, why? Why? What makes us separate from these friendships? And what is our response? And then what should our response be after the fact? Okay? So, we're going to tackle the why first. Why do we separate from our friends? I found 3 main reasons. There may be more, but these are just the ones that I see the most. Number 1, we grow apart from each other. Eventually, you build a bond with somebody, and you grow close to them. Because you have the same interests, maybe the same music, maybe the same television shows, maybe you have the same idols, maybe you have some of the same aspirations. You want to be in the same type of business, something of that nature. So you grow closer together to bond yourself together. But over time, whether it's through moving away, your aspirations change, your interests change, or sometimes, just by happenstance, you grow apart from each other. That's one way. The second way, your schedule doesn't really allow it. The older you get, the harder it is to keep friends. The reason that is, your schedule gets all kind of crammed together. All of a sudden you have a job. Eventually you end up having a family. Eventually you end up having other responsibilities, extracurricular activities, or running errands. You don't really have time to have friends. We're going to get into that in a moment. But the third is the fallout. Now, that very well could mean you got an argument with the person. You realize that you don't see eye to eye on a very important subject in your life, and you guys end up just parting ways. All 3 of these leave you with a few different stages. Those stages basically being, you go through this sadness, first of all. You go through this kind of shocked sadness because you had a friend, you had somebody to spend your time with, to grow closer with, to get to know, to bond with, and that's no longer there. Now there's a void in your life saying, okay, I had this bond with this person, now I'm on my own again. When you go through those times, where you're trying to bond with somebody, and they disappear, whether they're too busy, or you had a falling out, or you grew apart from one another, or whatever other reason you can think of, you have to find a way to fill that hole. This is one of the hardest things to do, because especially if you spend a lot of time with that person, you don't know how to fill your time. That's where you start to build hobbies and different things like that. But we're focusing on the friendship. The friendship falls apart. So what do? You have this sadness, this loneliness in your heart. Well, first thing I would really think of doing, remembering those good times that you had with that person, right? Sometimes, especially if you have a falling out, you like to focus on the negative. You like to focus on, well, we had blah, 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 but then you did this, and then I did this, and we had a falling out. You start to play the blame game, truth be told. Don't focus on that. That's going to drag you deeper down a dark area that you don't really need to be on. Understand that the friend that you had, they're still the same person, and you could have respect for them, you could care for them, you could support them from a distance. That's fine. But remember the good times. Remember that feeling that you had when you met or when you hung out. And understand that some people come to your life for a reason, and it's only for a period of time. Some people are not meant to be with us forever. You do end up having to accept the fact that not everyone's going to be there all the time. But if you remember those good times, if you remember those times or those things that about that person that bonded you, it's easier to sit back and go, you know what, we had our falling out, but man, they were a great person. They had a great personality. They had great taste in music, and I hope the best for them. Then you start to get in that stage of acceptance. Okay, I accept that this happened. Remember, this is basically if you have the fallout, right? If you are in that place where you were kind of angry over the situation, think of those good times. Think of those good times and say, you know what, they were a great person. I learned a lot from them. It's time to move on. Accept it. And honestly, keep moving forward. Like I said, friendships, some of them are only supposed to be in your life for a period of time. We don't even know what that period is, but God does. So He may bring somebody in your life at the right time, and they may leave at the right time. So trust in God's guidance in that. You don't have to force people to stay in your life. Some people are going to disappear, especially if you have a falling out. But you should still focus on the good times you had and move forward. And what I mean by moving forward, that means do not be afraid to keep trying. Keep making new friends. There's more people out there to meet. There's more people out there to get to know. Some of them may have the same interest as you. Some of them may be able to teach you something brand new that you've never known before. But if you kept hanging out with the same person that you had the fallout with, you might not meet the next person who's going to impact your life, who's going to bless you wholeheartedly. So you have to keep moving forward, okay? That's if you have the fallout. Now, I had the other two categories where it was you grow apart from each other. Again, that's similar to a fallout because now it doesn't seem like you're friends at all. It doesn't seem like you get along at all, or it doesn't seem like you ever have time for one another anymore. You may not get along anymore. You may not have the same interest anymore because you grew up, okay? The person that you were when you were 10 is not the same person that you are at 20. You have different interests, or you have more in-depth interests. And so the person that you hung out with when you were 10, when all you talked about was children's TV shows and movies and the beginning of your interest in music, well, now that's deepened into you're making music, or now you're writing stories. Instead of just watching TV, you're writing stories, and they're off doing their own thing. And that's beautiful. And again, you have to look back on those times and say, hey, we're not hanging out anymore. We haven't talked in many years, but they were a great friend. And then you still have to come to the understanding that I've got to move forward. I've got to keep making more friends in the interest that I have now. Let's focus on the interests that I have now and make those kind of friends and build those kind of bonds. If you are that person that you had a friend maybe in high school or in college and you thought, man, this person, we are tight, we are like this, we will never separate, and then you start to get a job, you start to date someone new, maybe you get married, or maybe they get married and they have kids. All of a sudden, you're going, man, we used to kick it all the time. Now I live over here, they live over there, and we never see each other. We don't talk, we don't text, we don't email, we don't Facebook, we don't do any way of keeping in contact with that person. Again, the same steps apply. Focus on the good, admit that you need to move on, but at the same time, that person you could still get in contact with. Actually, all three of these people you could still get into a contact with, and you could still build a relationship with them that is more in depth, that is more commonplace or common day than it was before, okay? But it's a little more difficult the older you get. Let me take a break from the notes. The reason I'm making this video is because I feel like in my life, I've made a lot of friends, but not all of them have stuck around. Actually, very few of them have stuck around through everything that I've been through. And I almost have friends in every single category that I wrote. I have friends who I grew up with, and we ended up just growing apart. They have different interests than I do. They got a family. I don't have my own family. I still have my parents. I still have my brothers and sisters, but I don't have my own wife and kids. You know, they do. So they have a whole different understanding of the world than what I do. They have different responsibilities than I do. I've had fallouts with people where they just were like, cut, we're not friends anymore. I'll be over here, don't contact me. I made the understanding of okay, and I moved on. Or I'm working on moving on. Let's say that. I've had people where we fully understand that we are still friends, but our schedules don't fully allow us time to hang out, or time to talk on the phone, or time to tweet each other, or text each other, or contact each other consistently. And I'm making this video as much for myself as I am for you guys. Don't give up. I know for me, when my friends start to disappear on me, and I get further down into whatever depression pit I may be in, or whatever moods I may be in that are not positive, that are not of God, I have to stop and think and say, you know what? Am I focusing on the good times? Am I looking at that person saying they're not in my life anymore, but man, they were a good friend. Man, they taught me a lot. Man, they were somebody I could trust in. Is there an understanding between the two of us of why we're not friends anymore? If it's a fallout, there's that understanding. This argument happened, we decided we weren't going to be friends anymore, or they decided we weren't going to be friends anymore, or I decided we weren't going to be friends anymore, and we went our separate ways. But you could still look at the fallout and say, hey, I had good times with that person. I can think of the positive. I could go with what I know to be good and say, hey, it didn't work out in the end, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Do not be afraid to keep trying. Well, what are you still trying? You're trying to build relationships. I get so strapped up in my head that I start to think, wait, all my friends end up leaving anyway. None of them stick around. So I'm just going to huddle myself into a corner and not interact with nobody. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a new place, met where I was around new people, and had the opportunity to meet these people, hear great stories, and experience something brand new. And because I was afraid of that commitment, I sat in that corner. I didn't say a word. I didn't meet anybody. And when I would meet up with my friends who were at the same event, when they took the time to meet new people, to greet new people, to hear stories, to have conversation, they were like, oh, did you meet so-and-so? He's a great guy, man. I heard some great stories. He's done some great things. And I'm looking over here going, I didn't hear any of that. How come I didn't make that bond? And that jealousy starts to creep up. And I have to remind myself, well, you didn't put yourself out there. Because you've been hurt by friends before. Because you've allowed yourself to feel the absence of a friend. You didn't allow yourself to do that this time because of what it felt like. So this is my encouragement to you guys. When you lose friends, when friends leave your life for whatever reason, it's not the end of the world. It's the beginning of something new. If your friend leaves your life just because they're busy, they started a family, they're in a different stage in their life, you're still friends. Call them up, shoot the breeze with them, hang out, have some conversation, ask them how they're doing, and understand that you can still build new relationships. If it's a fallout, come to an understanding that says, hey, it didn't work out, but we had some great times. I learned a lot. I learned how to be a better friend. Hopefully they learned something from me and you move on. But do not be afraid to keep trying. Do not be afraid to keep making friends, because every friend you make, they are impacting your life, hopefully for the better, and you are impacting their life, hopefully for the better, which makes the world a much better place, because those good impacts, yes, those good impacts are going to reverberate through time, because they're going to take your good deeds that you did for them, the acts of love that you showed them, and they're going to show it to others. You are going to take the acts of love that they showed you, and you're going to show it to others, and you're going to learn, and you're going to grow. So, my challenge is take some time, meet someone new this week, talk to someone new this week, hear a new story or a new perspective on something. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to introduce yourself to people. And when somebody leaves your life, know that God has a bigger plan, and there's a reason why they're no longer in your life. There's a reason why they moved on and you moved on. I hope you guys are blessed by this, and I hope that you guys take the challenge seriously, as I will also be taking this challenge seriously. God bless. I'll see you guys next time.